The United States makes the UN work when it wants it to work. And that is exactly the way it should be, because the only question for the United States is what's in our national interest.
My name is John, and the International Criminal Court is now in session. It is August 11th, 2024, and a lot of things have happened on the front line within Ukraine and also within Western Russia. So, without any further ado, let's break down the situation on the front itself, and perhaps I can give my perhaps a crappy opinion on what's happening, but also my reaction to, and I guess overall assessment of the situation, like going forward. So, without any further said, let's break it down, and let's get to Kursk. So, this is the situation on the Kursk front at the moment. The Russians have reestablished complete control over the village of Snagos after losing it to the Ukrainians initially during the start of their initial invasion of Kursk Oblast. And the Russians are reportedly trying to retake the village of Malaya Lakhnia. And also, the Russians and the Ukrainians are fighting tooth and nail for the sizable town of Sudzha, which is one of the largest border towns on the Russian-Ukrainian border. And I've also heard that the Ukrainians have also established control over the village of Plikovo. There's also a report that the Ukrainians have made a pretty big breakthrough that was like 30 kilometers or something, which I think is, let me see on this map here. Oh, yeah. Bilea, right here. That's at least what I've heard from Defense Politics Asia, but there have been no geolocations to back these claims, but also from what I can understand myself, there doesn't really seem to be any further proof of this big advance by Ukraine. And if it were to be true, then all these villages would have probably fallen by now, or perhaps maybe it's just a DRG raid by the Ukrainian armed forces. But yeah, so Zelensky has also come out and said that they wanted to restore justice by attacking Russia. And to be honest with you guys, I honestly don't think any of this makes sense at all, because if you really want to restore justice, why not, I don't know, try to restore everything that was lost in the Donetsk region, and perhaps maybe try to retake everything back in Lugansk too, along with maybe northern Kharkiv Oblast. And speaking of which, the situation in Kharkiv is tense, though there has been no activity as of late. Like, every single battle within the Kharkiv Oblast has been put on hold. The Russians not only cleared Gleboke, but also Volchansk has also seen a decrease in fighting, as everything is now focused on the Kursk direction. But otherwise, though, as I said, despite the tensions, and despite the fact that Russia has declared martial law on Bryansk, Belgorod, and Kursk, there has been no further fighting in Kharkiv Oblast. But yeah, getting back to Kursk, though, I personally think that the Ukrainians are wasting their men and resources by attacking Kursk, because, I mean, none of this makes any logical sense, because, I mean, for one, Kursk is not recognized as a part of Ukraine, and more Russians live in Kursk than there are Ukrainians. So obviously, all of these claims being made on Twitter by pro-Ukraine accounts that Kursk is somehow Ukraine, it just does not, there's nothing to really back it historically, but also ethnically. It's really ridiculous. And a lot of fake news has also been pushed out by pro-Russian Telegram channels too. And it's been quite insane, if you ask me. I honestly don't know how else to describe it, other than I personally think that they're over-exaggerating the overall situation on the ground for the Russians. Though I will say that the fact that the Ukrainians were able to break through the border with Russia unopposed initially at first is quite frightening if you're Vladimir Putin, who is sitting comfortably in the Kremlin as we speak. Though I will say, after seeing the video where Gary Zimov was reporting the situation to him, he visibly did not look happy about it at all. And I won't be shocked if somewhere down the line the Russians are going to counter this offensive with their own in Chernigov and Sumy sometime in the future, though I honestly don't think that's going to happen until either later 2024 or sometime in 2025. But time will tell on how that whole thing breaks down. And but yeah, just to get away from that, to get to Kharkiv Oblast, or at least back to it, the Russians have also advanced north of Pischine. But otherwise, though, nothing has really been going on the Kupiansk front, though I do think it is safe to say at this point that the Russians have established fire control over one half of Kupiansk front, while the second half is still under Ukrainian control, though Russians are advancing westward and southward towards Stelmakivka. And then going even further south, nothing much has gone on in Siversk direction, though the Russians have firmly established a bridgehead in western Chasiv Yar. So the Russians can now cross this area, I think, safely or so, though obviously there's going to still be some strikes fired upon them by the armed forces of Ukraine. But now they have established a firm bridgehead and can now advance in this direction here, which should probably give them easy control over a couple more neighborhoods within Chasiv Yar. Though I will say, as I said in one of my previous videos, that the hardest part for the Battle of Chasiv Yar is definitely going to be the center part, the downtown area where all the commie blocks are. But overall, though, I think as soon as the Russians start advancing further westward in Chasiv Yar, the battle is either going to get harder for them or it could become easier. So yeah, but other than that, though, that's pretty much it for Chasiv Yar. And in the Pokrovsk direction, the Russians have established complete control over the village of Zelene, or Zeline. I don't know how to personally pronounce it, so my apologies if I cannot speak Russian or Ukrainian. And they are also advancing towards the town of Gorivka. In fact, I think they're literally now within the town itself, like in the very eastward part of it. But nothing much has been reported yet, though I wouldn't be too shocked if the Russians are able to take this town and essentially enter the Pokrovsk metropolitan area, which includes both Pokrovsk and Myonograd. And perhaps also they're going to also advance towards the villages of Novozhiline, Orlivka, Zurevka, and Mykolaievka before entering another major town on the way to Pokrovsk, which is Novogorivka. I honestly don't think the battle for Seladove is going to begin for quite some time. They're probably going to bypass that, but what I am certain for sure is that the Russians are definitely getting closer to Pokrovsk, and perhaps maybe by sometime late next month, or maybe even October at the latest, the battle for Pokrovsk is going to start, and it could potentially serve as a decisive battle for Central Donetsk Oblast in eastern Ukraine. And then finally, to wrap up this video, we're going to talk a bit about the situation in the TORETSK section. So apparently in the TORETSK sector or section, the Russians have now established majority control over the town of New York, which is the biggest suburban area just south of the strategic city of TORETSK, which used to be home to 50,000 people at some point during the Soviet era. And as far as I know, outside of Syriac maps, most mappers are now claiming this entire area here, which used to be the 2014 to 2016 built Petro-Poroshenko line, has all fallen to Russian control. So perhaps by tomorrow, everything here is going to be under Russian control. And yeah, the Ukrainians are pretty much cooked in New York itself. And it's probably going to serve as a nice propaganda victory for the Russians because we all know about New York. It's the biggest city in all of America, and the fact that the Russians were able to take something that was actually named after it would be quite symbolically, I don't know, like something for them. And then we get to the TORETSK suburbs. The battle for these suburbs is coming to an end. Zalezhny or Artimovo, I guess, and Pivnichny, also known as Kirovo and Druzhba, are all coming to an end. The Russians now establish majority control over Pivnichny and Druzhba. Like, I think around like half of the settlement is now under Russian control, and it is expected that the Russians are going to begin their final push into this area. And once they are done doing that, then Pivnichny will fall. Like, 100% fall for sure. I'm also getting reports too, I don't know how accurate they are, but apparently Deep State UA, Silva General Staff, and I think another pro-Russian mapper have all said that the Russians and the Ukrainians have already started the battle for TORETSK in this citadel here. And if the news is to be confirmed, it would be huge, because the fact that the Russians would break through in the Kami Blocks area, in the eastern entrance of Toretsk, would not only be troubling for the Ukrainians, but it also would serve as a huge warning to everybody that Toretsk may not last long as many people would think. And to be honest with you guys, I just don't know how the battle for Toretsk could last as long as some people think it could. I don't think it's going to last long as Bakhmut did or Artyomovsk, and I honestly don't know if it could last as long as perhaps Avdiivka. But one thing is for sure, I do think the Russians have entered Toretsk itself, and it's only a matter of time, perhaps in the next month or two, before Toretsk itself falls to Russia, which would be a huge disaster, because then not only can the Russians go up north of the Sovietsky Donetsk-Donbass Canal, but then they could be able to also secure basically everything south of Chasiv Yar too. So yeah. So that is going to do it for today's video on the Russo-Ukrainian War. So I hope all of you enjoyed today's video. Give me a like, subscribe to the channel if you want, and I guess I'll see you all next time, everybody. So stay safe and peace out. Take care.